It's World Entrepreneurship Day and it's celebrated on August the 21st each year. It recognizes innovation, entrepreneurship and leadership. Locally, what kind of support is there for entrepreneurs? Well, to answer that question and more, we're joined by Larisha Naidoo, who's from Anglo American Zimele Fund. Thank you very much for your time this morning. I mean, we asked the question about what is available for entrepreneurs to grow or to establish themselves in South Africa, and many who have tried and lost many a battle would say there's very little in terms of resources. What would you say about that?
So I'd say, corporate South Africa is doing quite a bit. In terms of Anglo American, we've established Anglo American Zimele, which Zimele is a Nguni word meaning to stand on one's own two feet. And really through this initiative, we go out into our host communities, work with various partners to really stimulate startup businesses and develop local SMMEs in and around the areas through multiple streams of mentoring, coaching, partnership development, funding, access to potential markets within Anglo American platinum, Kumba, iron ore, De Beers, as well as the broader Anglo American environment. So there's a lot happening in our space.
No, there is a lot indeed. And as you mentioned, those initiatives and the stakeholders involved, is the support focused on a specific sector, or is this something that could be branched out to afford other budding entrepreneurs the opportunity to access the kind of resources that you've put out there?
So if we look at Anglo American, our purpose is to reimagine mining to improve people's lives. So part of our sustainable mining plan imperatives would be to look at supporting small businesses within the mining sector, but obviously beyond the mining sector is a very important part for sustainability. So enterprise development and working with people on the ground to understand what their passion is, what they'd like to embark on to create sustainable livelihoods would be key. I think another important part is through the Anglo American Zimele Loan Fund initiative. We're working very closely with ABSA to look at sustainable funding and lending for our SMMEs. To date, we've given just over 450 million rand worth of loans with a flat interest rate of 6%, de-risking our beneficiaries through integration into supply chains, as well as really working with them to understand their cost and really managing themselves in some very tough times currently.
No, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned the practical parts that have been done in terms of the loans that you've just spoken about, over 400 million at a very good rate of 6%. But how many people to date has Zimele been able to train or really uplift in the various forms that you are able to as Zimele?
So over 5,422 beneficiaries have gone through our program. You know, through 2018, Anglo American really positioned itself to say, what is it that we can do from an unemployment, inequality and poverty level to be a contributor? There's a lot that needs to happen. We would just be one contributing factor. And through that, we've given over 12,000 mentorship sessions, really targeting women and youth, and really looking at everyday challenges that small businesses experience. And it would be unjustified if I don't speak about the youth in our communities. A big focus of what we do is also youth development, apart from enterprise and supplier development.
Now, of course, it's not just the role of South Africa's private sector, Larisha, to encompass these different programs into the economy and to grow entrepreneurial ventures. Government has a huge role to play, and of course, they have struggled over the past. But I'm just wondering, is this an avenue rather that you're willing to take on as Zimele in terms of working closely with government and related stakeholders if you already haven't?
So government is a key part of what we do, and private and public sector have to work together. Infrastructure development, very critical to create those market value chain linkages. All the training in the world can happen, but that demand to pipeline that at the end of the day creates the procurement opportunities is very, very critical. So government plays a big role in that. We work with the development finance institutions like the IDCs, and really look at CIFA supporting further on loan funding, taking the lessons learned out of everyday working to see how we can produce toolkits that can really stimulate local economic development to create sustainable livelihoods for everyday South Africans. So definitely a critical part of everything we do would be workshopping with government partners, thinking up ideas to really, really stimulate further economic opportunities for everyday South Africans.
Right, and I suppose you did mention this briefly, but just to highlight the importance of making sure that these entrepreneurs are equipped with the skills of the future, you know, the direction that the world is taking. This is obviously something that Zimele is also focusing on, one would assume.
Yes, very, very critical. If we look at, a big focus area, it is working with multiple partners. So whether in the banking sector, I refer to ABSA, whether it is NGOs, TechnoServe, we've got multiple other partners that are technical, South African Institution of Chartered Accountants. We've got technical partners that will really work with us to really look at what are the everyday skills that will stimulate the economic development. Also, our supply chains play a very critical role. So working with our procurement teams, the strategic partners of Anglo American are very, very important to stimulate specific technical skilling, as well as creating economic procurement opportunities that local SMMEs and even youth can participate in. We see that there's great opportunities in tourism, the retail sector, but we also need to understand the challenges that everyday businesses experience and really work with what are the essential services that small businesses require, whether it's legal services, whether it's tendering abilities so that they could venture out and really understand. And those are the things that Zimele wants to create. We also know that networks are very important, access to information, access to a hub with a business advisor. So hub services out in our rural communities is also very, very important to support small businesses in and around Anglo American communities.
And last and very briefly, if you could, Larisha, are you confident that South Africa will be able to create a conducive ground for entrepreneurs, just based on what you've seen in terms of global trends and the upliftment programs that have been introduced in other parts of the world?
So I must say, South Africans are very resilient. We've seen it during COVID, just the ability to look at livelihoods. Apart from that, if we look at just our loan funding abilities, our ability to deploy funding, during COVID, we've seen we've played a role with looking at how do we use digitization to train our people during hard lockdowns? How do we use mobile learning to do that? How do we also de-risk funding for people to realize their opportunities and dreams, I think is also important. And digital platforms for them to be able to procure on, to access opportunities is very important. So I think digitization and innovation is very important. We've seen, as climate change is becoming the biggest conversation, inequality, what more can we do through the mining sector, looking at circular economy, alternate industry. So I will work with partners within Anglo American and beyond to really look at what are the innovation that we can go towards and really work with local communities to be part of something that can make a difference to societies in a sustainable way.